Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor, and for today's video, I'm going over all of the books that I'm reading for the NEWTS Readathon. This April was my first time doing the NEWTS Readathon, and since I did go ahead and complete that, I'm ready to take my NEWTS in August. I am a sucker for all things Harry Potter, so obviously if there's a Harry Potter themed readathon, I'm definitely going to be taking part in it. My career is the same as the one I was going for in the NEWTS Readathon, and that is going to be the librarian. So I have my whole chart here. I did make this bullet journal spread before I watched the readathon announcement video, which I'll leave down below. So I put every single prompt for Ancient Runes, Arithmancy, Defense Against the Dark Arts, History of Magic, and Transfiguration on there, which would be a lot of books. Luckily, I don't need to read all of them. I only need to sit my NEWTS for the Ancient Runes, Defense Against the Dark Arts, and History of Magic. I need to get an O in Ancient Runes, an E in Defense Against the Dark Arts, and an E in History of Magic. So for each of those, I do have to fulfill a book prompt. If there's extra time, I'll go back and start taking Arithmancy and Transfiguration. Why not? Be like Hermione Granger, go above and beyond. Let's go ahead and get into it, give all the prompts and what I am going to be sitting and reading to complete my NEWTS this year. So to receive an A on the Ancient Runes NEWT, you have to read a friend's recommendation, and for that one I'm going with one that my boyfriend picked out for me, and that is going to be Kingdom Come by Mark Waid, illustrated by Alex Ross. This is, IGN calls it one of the greatest comic book stories of all time, so that's kind of a glowing review. This is also one that my boyfriend says is one of the greatest Justice League stories. I'm looking forward to reading this one. I'm trying to get more into comics. I have read mostly Marvel comics because big fan of Marvel movies. My boyfriend did grow up with DC Comics and all of that. Our dog is named Bruce because of Batman. So I'm looking forward to reading this one, and I realized I should probably try and start utilizing more comic books and more graphic novels in readathons because it'll make my life a whole lot easier. I am the crazy who still picks like 500-page books for readathons and then wonders why I have a hard time completing them. So that's why my first challenge is going to be reading a comic, because obviously this one is, I mean, a little bit thick as far as comic bind-ups go. The nature of the book is that there are pictures, so this is going to be an easier read. I'm a little nervous going into this one as like kind of my first foray into DC Comics, because if it's one of the best of all time, then it can only go downhill from here. But I am looking forward to reading this one. To get an E in Ancient Runes, you need to read a book that was written in past tense, and for that one I am going with Mindhunter by John Douglas and Mark Olshaker. This is what the show Mindhunter on Netflix is about. This is inside the FBI's elite serial crime unit. John Douglas was the special agent that pioneered criminal profiling. So true crime and criminal justice have always been things that have interested me a lot. When I was a kid, I have like a letter to myself written in like 5th grade, and it was a project that we had to write a letter to our older selves. And I wrote that I was going to be a CSI agent when I grew up, because I just, from a really young age, I was just really interested in watching Law & Order and CSI and all the shows that, you know, I probably shouldn't have been watching as like a 4th, 5th grader, but I did anyway, and that's something that I just really wanted to be when I grew up. A little bit of a different career path now, but it was definitely something that up until, I mean, high school, that was something I was considering to be one of the careers that I was genuinely pursuing. And not to mention, I have also really loved Criminal Minds. That's been one of my favorite TV shows for a really long time. And that's kind of like a fictionalized version of what happens here. So I'm really excited to read into this. I think criminal profiling is fascinating, and I knew that this was a book, so I haven't actually watched Mindhunter the show yet, so I do need to get around to reading this sooner rather than later so that I can actually start watching the show, because I have been savoring Criminal Minds so slowly since I found out that it was coming into an end, and also just since some certain characters have left, it hasn't really been the same show for a while, so I've definitely been needing a show to fill that gap. so I can finally finish it and move on. I think Mindhunter will fill that gap, so looking forward to reading this book so that I can go on to that show, and also so that I can get an E in my Ancient Runes Newt. Now, to get an O in Ancient Runes, you have to read a book that's been on your TBR for a while. So for this one, I went ahead and looked at all of the books that I own on my physical TBR, and then I looked on Goodreads and found which one had been on my want to read list the very longest, and that one was actually one I purchased this month, and that was Strange Weather. This is a compilation of short stories. I believe there are 4. So yes, it's a collection of 4 chilling short novels. Looking forward. I'm excited. It's 428 pages, but it's divided up into 4 stories, so shouldn't be too hard. I might even split this up throughout the readathon. We'll see. You can definitely do that with this one since it is 4 short novels. I'm really excited. I've heard wonderful things about this collection. Joe Hill has written some of my favorite books. Nosferatu is one of my favorite horror books of all time. I really enjoyed The Fireman and Horns as well. I haven't read Heart-Shaped Box or this one yet. Really, even his comics, I've loved too. Everything this man does pretty much, and I've read and I've loved it. So I'm really looking forward to reading this one. Moving on to Defense Against the Dark Arts. To get an A in Defense Against the Dark Arts, you need to read a book that's black under the dust jacket. And for that one, I'm going with Needful Things by Stephen King. And this one is, other than that pretty little golden embossing there, I am really looking forward to reading this one. It's a little chunky, so it's a little intimidating. It's over 600 pages, which I know I just got finished saying earlier that I was trying not to read huge books for readathons, but I actually had a really hard time finding a book that was all black underneath the dust jacket and that I hadn't already read. This is a book set in Castle Rock, and it's about a shop that can give you basically whatever your heart desires, and the prices are a little bit more sinister than money. So that's all I wanted to read up on about this one. I think it's very hard to go online, even on Goodreads, and find synopsises of King's work without them getting spoiled, just because they are older and a lot of them are so ingrained in public subconscious. So that's all I know about this one. Going into it pretty blind. Looking forward to this one. I have heard good things from the people I know who have read this one. So hopefully this book will be really easy to fly through because it is, again, over 600 pages. And then to get an E in Defense Against the Dark Arts, you have to read the first book that you remember from your TBR. So this was when you're writing down the prompts, the very first book that came to your mind that you've wanted to read. That's the one you write down. And that is When the Sky Fell on Splendor by Emily Henry. This sets place in a small town in Ohio, and it is about a group of friends, and they spend their free time investigating local ghost stories and legends, and there's aliens. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. I'd heard some buzz about it at towards the beginning of this year, and this gave me Stranger Things vibes, and I love Stranger Things, so figured this would be a good one to pick up. And it's fairly short. It's, I don't know, 300 words. But the font's pretty big, so I think this one will be a pretty easy one for a readathon. And then moving on to History of Magic. To receive an A in History of Magic, you have to read a fantasy, and for that one I am reading Mossflower, and this is one of the Redwall books. They're all on my top shelf up here, and I've kind of realized I read and consume a lot of dark material, just in terms of TV shows and books and movies. It's just, I like horror and I like a lot of dark twisty things, so I thought it would be kind of fun this year to reread one book from this Redwall series every single month, just to have at least one lighthearted thing guaranteed every single month. So this is Mossflower. It's one of the Redwall books. This one I'm super excited about because I remember really liking this one. The villain is really cool. She is one of the only female villains from the entire series, and she's a wildcat. And this is kind of the origin story of how Redwall came to be, because this book is before Redwall existed. This is a prequel. This is one of the floppy paperback versions that I have of the series, so I'm looking forward to reading that one. So I'm really looking forward to reading that one. I think it'll be a really fast, lighthearted read. And then that takes us to the very last prompt that's required to become a librarian, and that is read a book that includes a map. And for that one, I am reading Dinosaurs: The Grand Tour, and this is a nonfiction book about dinosaurs. Everything worth knowing about dinosaurs, from Arondax to Zuniceratops. And this is basically just an information book about every single dinosaur. It's got fun pictures in it, and it also has maps explaining where each dinosaur came from. One of my other fascinations, other than like true crime, is dinosaurs. I absolutely adore them. That's like one little like micro history that I love learning about, is just dinosaurs in general. I never really outgrew that childhood dinosaur fascination, so I'm looking forward to reading this one. I think this is just gonna be a really fun read. Like, the illustrations are just gorgeous, and I think it is fascinating that they do have like a map of where each single dinosaur like they were located, or where the fossils were found. A lot of these dinosaurs were very, very localized and you couldn't find them everywhere, so I think it'll be really cool just to read this one. I don't know. It's nonfiction. It's kind of a weird pick, but I am really looking forward to reading this one. It just looks like I'm gonna have a lot of fun reading it. These are all the books that I'm going to be reading for the NEWTS Readathon. I did write down the rest of the arithmancy and transfiguration challenges, as well as the O levels for Defense Against the Dark Arts and History of Magic. So if I have time and I read all of those, then I'll definitely be trying to find other books that I want to read in the month and squeezing them in. Let me know down below if you're participating, because I know this is a big event that happens on BookTube every single year. I'm really looking forward to participating. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Who doesn't love a Harry Potter themed readathon? That's gonna be all for this video though. If you did like it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, comment down below, and subscribe for more videos from me. I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye.